I had been married to Ryan for 8 years. We were stable, comfortable, and in that quiet stage of a marriage where surprises faded and routines took over. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't excited either. When my company planned a 3-day retreat at a resort 5 hours away, Ryan couldn't come due to work, and I felt relieved. I needed space. I didn't even pack my wedding ring. The first night, I wandered into the resort bar alone. It was dimly lit, filled with people who weren't from my world, laughing, drinking, letting loose. I ordered a drink, planning to leave after one. That's when I noticed him. He sat across the room, dark hair, tailored shirt, a presence that felt familiar in an unfamiliar way. He looked at me like he already knew me. We kept catching each other's gaze until he finally approached. His name was Aaron. He was charming, but not in a rehearsed way. We talked for an hour about nothing and everything. He didn't ask if I was married, and I didn't volunteer the truth. I told myself this wasn't cheating. It was talking, connection. But when he asked if I wanted to take the conversation somewhere more private, I didn't say no. We ended up in his room. The entire thing was a blur of emotion, skin, breath, and guilt that I buried deep just to get through the night. It wasn't tender. It wasn't angry either. It was desperate. Two strangers pretending that this moment meant more than it did. When it was over, I slipped out while he was asleep, told myself I'd forget it by morning. Back in my room, I stared at my phone. Dozens of unread messages from Ryan. I ignored them. The silence between us had been building for months. I wasn't ready to tell him why I'd stopped trying. The next day at checkout, I caught a glimpse of Aaron again. He smiled, and for a second I felt something pull at me. Regret? Lust? Both? I returned home pretending nothing had happened. I hugged Ryan a little longer than usual, and he noticed. He asked if everything was okay, and I lied. I told him the retreat was boring, that I missed him. I didn't expect to see Aaron again. I didn't know he was about to walk into my house. 3 days after I got back, Ryan told me his younger brother was coming to stay with us for a while. He hadn't seen him in years, some family falling out Ryan never talked about. I didn't ask questions. I just nodded, tried to focus on work, and pretended the weekend never happened. That evening, Ryan called me to the living room. I was in the kitchen, still in my office clothes, sipping wine. "Come meet him," he said. I turned the corner, glass in hand, and my stomach dropped so fast I nearly dropped it. Aaron stood there. He looked just as shocked as I felt. His face went blank, but his eyes flickered with recognition. Ryan had his arm around him, grinning. "This is my baby brother, Aaron. Finally convinced him to come out here." My throat closed. I managed a smile, nodded, and forced out a "nice to meet you." My hand trembled as I reached for his. His touch was colder this time and briefer. The days that followed were a blur of tightrope walking. Aaron said nothing. I said nothing. But the air between us was sharp, full of electricity and secrets. Ryan was oblivious. He thought his brother was distant because of their past. I knew better. One afternoon, Ryan asked me to drop something off at the guest room. Aaron was inside, shirtless, drying his hair. I turned to leave, but he spoke. "We need to talk." "No, we don't," I whispered. His voice lowered. "You didn't know, did you?" I shook my head. I didn't either. We stood in silence, both of us realizing the gravity of what we'd done. It wasn't just infidelity. It was betrayal on a level that could destroy Ryan. We had slept together blindly, carelessly, and now it lived between us like a loaded weapon. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to Ryan, pretending to be at peace, while every part of me burned with guilt. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to disappear. I hated Aaron for being in my house. I hated myself more for letting him touch me again in my mind. Aaron kept his distance, barely joining meals, keeping conversations short. But every time we locked eyes, it was like we were back in that hotel room, unraveling something that couldn't be undone. Something that now had a name, a face, and a consequence far worse than either of us had prepared for. 2 weeks passed. Aaron was still in the house, still silent. The tension grew heavier by the day. I avoided being alone with him, but the avoidance became its own kind of intimacy. Ryan noticed something was off. He asked if I was okay, if Aaron had said something. I told him work was stressing me out. He believed me, but not completely. One evening, Ryan had to leave for an overnight conference. I came home late, hoping to avoid Aaron, but he was in the kitchen. Alone, he looked tired. He poured a drink and offered me one without speaking. I hesitated, then took it. The silence between us cracked. "I'm leaving tomorrow," he said. I nodded. I should have told him. From day one. "You didn't know," I said. I still should have known better. We sat across from each other, both holding back words that didn't matter anymore. He looked at me with the same intensity from the resort, but now it carried guilt instead of want. "I think about it all the time," he said. "Not just what we did, but that I didn't stop it. You didn't force anything." I said yes. I made the choice. It was the wrong one. I wanted to agree. I wanted to rewind everything. But I couldn't. The memory existed now, permanent, a secret that couldn't be confessed without destroying the man we both cared about. Aaron leaned forward. "I'm telling him I'm leaving because of the job offer. He'll be hurt. He'll be worse off if he finds out the truth." I nodded. We didn't say goodbye. We just sat there until I stood up and went to bed. The next morning, Ryan hugged his brother tightly before he left. He told him to visit again soon, that things were finally starting to feel like family again. Aaron looked at me one last time over Ryan's shoulder. Then he walked out. I felt relief. Then I felt hollow. That night, Ryan and I had dinner together. He was warm, affectionate. I laughed more than I had in weeks. For a moment, I believed we could go back to normal. Later, he kissed me like he used to. There was no suspicion in his touch, no question in his eyes. I wanted to believe I could keep this buried forever. But the memory of Aaron was rooted deep now, feeding off silence, shaping something I could never undo. A month passed. The air had settled, but nothing inside me had. Ryan noticed I was distant again. He planned a weekend getaway to reconnect. I agreed, trying to pretend I was the same woman he married. But the truth clung to everything. I felt it in every touch, every word I held back. One evening, I was folding laundry when Ryan walked in holding his phone. His face was pale. He looked at me, confused, almost scared. "Why is Aaron texting me this?" I reached for the phone. A single message glowed on the screen. "You need to ask her what happened at the resort." My hands went cold. My mouth dried. Ryan's eyes searched mine. "What happened?" I sat down slowly. My mind raced for lies, excuses, anything that could soften what I had to say. But nothing could. I didn't know who he was. I began. Ryan's face twisted. I told him everything. I left nothing out. From the drink to the hotel room to the moment Aaron walked into our house. I told him I was ashamed, that it had never happened before, that I hadn't touched him since. He didn't say a word, just listened. When I finished, he walked out of the room. I didn't follow. He didn't come home that night. The next morning, I found a note. He was staying with a friend. Needed time. Said not to contact him. The silence that followed was worse than the truth. I didn't hear from Ryan for days. I texted once. No reply. The house felt colder without him. I went to work. I came home. I didn't eat much. I didn't sleep. A week later, he showed up. He looked thinner, eyes red. He didn't hug me. "I talked to Aaron," he said. I waited. He said it wasn't your fault, that it just happened, that you didn't know. I nodded. I believe him. I even believe you. But I can't live with it. My heart cracked. "I'll file. You don't need to do anything. I'll keep it quiet." And just like that, it ended. Ryan left, and I stayed in the house we built together. Alone. No calls. No messages. Just memories I never asked for. Aaron never reached out again. I broke something I couldn't fix. Not because I wanted more, but because I wasn't paying attention to what I already had. And now I live with that silence every single day.